Today we're diving into a fundamentally different approach to agriculture, one that challenges long-held assumptions about soil health and crop production. We're talking about bioactive emissions farming, a system that redefines how we understand, manage, and optimize our agricultural lands. My guest Eloise has deeply explored this concept. Eloise, the core idea here seems to be that bioactive isn't just another product you add to soil. Can you explain what it actually is?
Absolutely, Noah. That's a critical distinction. Bioactive isn't a fertilizer or an additive or a simple amendment. It's a carbon-first biological activation system. Its purpose is to restore the natural function of agricultural soils by addressing what's often the most limiting factor in modern farming: biologically available carbon. We've traditionally viewed soil as this inert medium that needs external inputs, but bioactive recognizes it as a living biological system entirely powered by carbon and energy flow.
That's a significant shift. So you're saying modern agriculture isn't limited by a lack of nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, or potassium, but rather by the ability of the soil's biology to access and utilize those nutrients. That almost sounds counterintuitive when we constantly hear about nutrient depletion.
It is counterintuitive to the conventional mindset, but it's crucial. Nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and micronutrients are indeed abundant in soils and inputs. The constraint lies in the biology's capacity to cycle and convert these into plant-available forms. That biological function is intricately governed by carbon availability, its form, and the timing of its delivery. Bio-Agtive works by closing the carbon loop on farms. It captures carbon that's already being produced during routine operations, transforms it into a biologically active form, and then reintegrates it into the soil-plant system precisely when the soil biology can respond most effectively. This restores ecological function, reduces reliance on synthetic inputs, and improves soil structure and water dynamics. Plus, this approach can often be had at a fraction of the cost of conventional fertility programs.
So instead of just adding more nitrogen, you're essentially providing the fuel for the soil's existing biological machinery to work more efficiently. But how does the system actually capture and transform carbon? Is it some sort of special equipment?
It involves specialized equipment, yes. A core component is what's called a fusion tank. The system is fitted to the front of a tractor and is fed combusted carbons directly from the engine. These carbons are then processed into a biological stimulant. The stimulant is then inoculated with a microbiome tailored specifically for that farm, and finally, it's delivered as a vapor to the landscape. The beauty of it is that any machine burning fuel, like irrigation systems, planters, sprayers, or harvesters, can integrate this system. It allows biology to be applied across virtually any crop or machinery setup.
That's quite innovative. I'm imagining a tractor essentially recycling its own emissions back into the soil as a nutrient. What's the science behind combusted carbon becoming a biological stimulant, and how does this address large-scale farming where vast amounts of carbon are needed?
Excellent question. Diesel fuel, at its origin, came from plants. Oil exists because plants and microbes captured carbon over geological time. When diesel undergoes combustion in an engine, the carbon undergoes pyrolysis, forming nanoscale char. Bioactive processes this into a clear liquid containing solubilized biochar and a spectrum of carbon compounds with diverse chemistries. This plant-derived carbon then feeds the soil microbiome. This process mimics natural historical carbon and mineral additions, like those from fires or volcanic activity, but in a controlled, biologically available form. This system is explicitly designed for broad-acre farming. Instead of simply releasing those carbons into the atmosphere, we convert them into a vital biological stimulant.
So we're talking about nanotechnology here, applying extremely small, precise doses rather than large volumes. Farmers are accustomed to thinking that more input equals better results. How do you reconcile that mindset with microdosing and this nanoscale approach?
It requires a significant mindset shift, truly. Farmers are used to seeing large volumes of inputs, believing more is better. But at the nanoscale, the impact comes from precision and timing. It's about small, repeated doses throughout the season where surface area becomes incredibly critical. This approach makes biological inputs practical at scale because they are effective, affordable, and efficient. The key realization is that leading with synthetic nitrogen often undermines the carbon cycle. When carbon leads, especially in its gaseous form like CO2 from the engine, the biology becomes far more effective at supplying nitrogen throughout the entire season. We call this carbon vaping, and it delivers combusted carbon, microbial byproducts, beneficial microbes, minerals, and humidity in a form that's immediately bioavailable. Also, we've learned that leading with nitrogen suppresses the plant's ability to move carbon into the soil, which is why leading with carbon is key.
That makes sense. Delivering exactly what's needed when it's needed in a form that can be used immediately. What kind of results are you seeing in terms of crop performance and soil health? After decades of synthetic fertilizer use, one might expect a significant drop in yields or nutrient levels when switching to a system like this.
The evidence over more than 20 years of field application, and now through conventional research, strongly challenges that assumption. Bio-Active Emissions Farming demonstrates that productive, profitable agriculture does not require synthetic fertilizer. We're consistently matching or exceeding conventional yields while dramatically reducing costs, improving nutrient density, and increasing long-term resilience. For instance, farms have documented wheat protein levels upwards of 20% without synthetic fertilizer, year after year, with no yield loss or protein decline. Soil tests after 2 decades show improved pH, increased zinc, and rising overall nutrient levels, not depletion. We've seen farms adopt this system across 12,000 acres in a single season, achieving strong yields in dry conditions, high protein in peas, and consistent quality that even industrial partners like Coors have validated.
The long-term data supporting increased nutrient levels without synthetic inputs is particularly compelling. Let's talk about that earth, wind, and fire analogy you mentioned earlier. How does that explain nutrient availability, especially for elements like nitrogen, which we're so accustomed to adding as an input?
It's a foundational concept for understanding natural fertility. Fire represents the sun, binding carbohydrates. A photon of sunlight hits a plant leaf with enough energy to drive the Calvin cycle, bonding carbon and hydrogen. That's the energy we harvest. Wind signifies atmospheric inputs, primarily CO2 and nitrogen. Air is roughly 78% nitrogen, but it's N2, a very strong chemical bond. Only a few forces, like lightning or microbial enzymatic activity, can break that bond to make nitrogen plant available. When plants absorb nitrate or organically mineralized nitrogen, they can take in more beneficial cations like calcium, magnesium, and potassium, strengthening their structure and resistance. Earth provides minerals, but only 2 to 3% of a crop's biomass actually comes from the soil. Over 95% comes from air and water. Photosynthesis, photo meaning light, uses the full spectrum of energy to capture and convert these elements. Our traditional mindset of mining nutrients like potash, formed millions of years ago, needs to be reevaluated against the evidence that a healthy microbiome can make these nutrients available naturally. Modern agriculture treats nitrogen as a mined input, but Bio-Active recognizes it as an atmospheric resource converted biologically.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, soil isn't depleted, it's simply underactivated. And by properly managing carbon, biology, and photosynthesis, agriculture can become more productive, profitable, and resilient without synthetic fertilizers. It's about empowering the natural systems rather than overriding them.
Precisely. The core shift is moving from input-driven fertility to carbon-driven biological systems that unlock nutrients already present in soil, air, water, and plant residues. When carbon leads, biology becomes the driving force, leading to stable or increasing nutrient levels, improved soil structure, enhanced water use efficiency, and dramatically higher nutrient density in crops. It's a complete paradigm shift that demonstrates nature's incredible capacity capacity for regeneration and productivity when given the right conditions.
This has been a fascinating discussion on bioactive emissions farming and the profound shift it represents in agriculture. If you found this conversation insightful, share it with someone who might also be interested in learning about carbon-driven biological systems in farming.